Hello, everybody. Welcome back. This is Patriot Independence Live. Today is Monday, January 5th, 2026. Got quite a few things to go over with you today regarding Venezuela and the aftermath of everything and the Monroe Doctrine. So we'll wait for the stream to populate, get a couple more people in, and then we'll get right on it. How's everybody doing today? Drop a comment in the chat. Let me know that you're watching. Let me know how the audio sounds. How's everything sounding? How's everybody doing today? Is everybody doing okay today? Captain, you're a legend, man. You're always in all of my streams. I'm gonna let's see. I'm gonna add you as a moderator. Okay. So the thing I want to talk about is everything that's going on with Venezuela. What comes next? That is the title of the video. Venezuela, the Maduro regime falls, and what comes next. And people shouldn't be blind to the significance of what happened in Venezuela. It wasn't simply a move on just Venezuela. And I think it's the beginning of something much larger. And it's obvious that Cuba and Colombia could be next, according to the way Trump's talking, the way Rubio's talking. But I'll let them speak, and you can hear for yourself. So first here is Rubio. Trump administration says Cuba is next. Communism is failing. For too long, these regimes have peddled drugs and impoverished their people. The U.S. is cleaning up. So let's take a listen here.
When it's Donald Trump, all these Democrats go bonkers.
Is the Cuban government...
When it's Donald Trump, all these Democrats go bonkers.
Is the Cuban government the Trump administration's next target, Mr. Secretary? Very quickly.
Well, the Cuban government is a huge problem. Yeah, the Cuban government is a huge problem. First of all,
is that a yes?
Cuba, but I don't think people fully appreciate. I think they're in a lot of trouble. Yes, I'm not going to talk to you about what our future steps are going to be and our policies are going to be right now in this regard, but I don't think it's any mystery that we are not big fans of the Cuban regime, who, by the way, are the ones that were propping up Maduro. His entire, internal security force, his internal security apparatus is entirely controlled by...
And one thing people need to realize, and a lot of people don't realize this, a lot of people on the left, a lot of the liberals, see, some of these people, they don't know history. Venezuela was once I think it was the fourth largest economy in the world, and it was, I could be wrong, now correct me if I'm wrong, but it was the most prosperous nation in Latin America. And I want to say roughly 27 to 30 years ago, it fell to Hugo Chavez. And before that, it was infiltrated by the Cubans. The Cubans actually infiltrated, and they took over Venezuela. And now we see the fruits of that.
by Cubans. One of the untold stories here is how, in essence, you talk about colonization, because I think you said Dulce Rodriguez mentioned that. The ones who have sort of colonized, at least inside the regime, are Cubans. It was Cubans that guarded Maduro. He was not guarded by Venezuelan bodyguards. He had Cuban bodyguards. In terms of their internal intelligence, who spies on who inside to make sure there are no traitors, those are all Cubans.
All right.
When it's Donald Trump.
And then we got Trump on Air Force One. He was talking about Colombia. Colombia is run by a sick man. He's not going to be doing it for very long. And then the reporter said, so will there be an operation by the U.S. in Colombia? Trump, sounds good to me. Let's take a listen.
So there will be an operation.
And that's Venezuela. It's very sick. Colombia is very sick, too. Run by a sick man who likes making cocaine and selling it to the United States. And he's not going to be doing it very long, let me tell you.
What does that mean? He's not going to be doing it very long.
He's not doing it very long. He has cocaine mills and cocaine factories. He's not going to be doing it very long.
So there will be an operation by the U.S.
It sounds good to me.
Secretary Rubio mentioned.
You know why? Because they kill a lot of people. Yeah. And that's Venezuela. It's very sick.
Sounds good to me. That's what he says. Sounds good. Now, see, this is a part of a larger operation. Venezuela was just the testing ground, and I'll explain further why I believe that. And it has to do with the Monroe Doctrine. Let me see if I can find my clip here. I had everything here pulled up. Here we go. And you know, after I rewatched Trump's press conference, the address on what happened in Venezuela, I noticed this about the Monroe Doctrine, and now everything is starting to make more sense. If you know the history of the Monroe Doctrine, you know what it meant, the foreign policy of it. It all starts making a lot more sense, and this will really make you think about things that are coming in the future. And the legend himself, Alex Jones, even pointed out this same theory. So let's go ahead and take a listen to it.
Very important, but we forgot about it. All of these actions were in gross violation of the core principles of American foreign policy, dating back more than 2 centuries, and not anymore. All the way back, it dated to the Monroe Doctrines. And the Monroe Doctrine is a big deal, but we've superseded it by a lot, by a real lot. They now call it the Monroe Document. I don't know. It's Monroe Doctrine. We sort of forgot about it. It was very important, but we forgot about it. We don't forget about it anymore. Under our new national security strategy, American dominance in the Western Hemisphere will never be questioned again. Won't happen. All of
this is key. Now, we were told, over the years, we were told by legal scholars, politicians, etc., that the Monroe Doctrine was dead. It's an outdated relic of the 1800s with no place in modern geopolitics. And Trump has now proven that it may have never disappeared. It may be relevant today because his national security strategy quietly brought it back, and Venezuela was where it was now enforced. Because when the United States moved decisively against Maduro, it wasn't just about one regime, one area, or one country. Hold on, I'm having audio problems here. I keep getting these same notifications. Anyway, I'll just keep going. And if anything bad in the audio, you guys just got to let me know, okay? So, it wasn't just one country, and I think that's what a lot of people are missing. It was about redrawing boundaries, and guess what happened? China noticed. Russia's recalculated. Iran, they attempted a response. In fact, Iran, reports are coming out of Iran with all the protests. The Ayatollah and the leader there are talking about seeking exile in Moscow. So it's not looking good for Iran either. But America's neighbors, Canada, Mexico, they all paid very close attention. And I want to go over what this Monroe Doctrine really means in the 21st century and why Venezuela just became the test case, and whether enforcing it protects the Western Hemisphere or opens a new era of global power competition based on responses and reactions. Man, once boundaries return, everything changes, and the only question you should be asking is what happens next. Did Trump open Pandora's box, or did he reestablish U.S. dominance? So let's take a listen to this.
Suggesting he's Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro suggesting he's open to talks with Washington.
And it's crazy. He went from he wanted to, and see, this is something that the Democrats are going to try to throw in everybody's faces. They're saying, he wanted to do talks, he wanted to have talks and all this, but it didn't play out like he wanted it to, and he was too late. He kept, in my opinion, I think he was just pushing the ball down the road. It's all he was doing.
Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro suggesting he's open to talks with Washington following months of American military pressure. In an interview on state TV, Maduro said, quote, wherever they want and whenever they want, in a reference to a dialogue with the U.S. on drug trafficking, oil, and immigration. To date, Maduro has not confirmed a U.S. land attack on a docking facility in his country. U.S. forces have also carried out numerous strikes on suspected narco boats since September, killing more than 100 people.
So, how did we go from him wanting to suddenly negotiate to him getting owned, loaded on a helicopter? Hold on.
And cancel brunch?
Ask for Cologuard. It's effective and you can...
All right. Forgot to hit pause on that in the background. Anyway, so how did we go from him wanting to suddenly negotiate to him, getting loaded on a helicopter and, put under arrest and flown back to the United States to face justice? And you see, a very, very big message was sent yesterday, a loud one. A loud message was sent yesterday. And a lot of people not even realizing that, wait a minute, it wasn't yesterday, it was the 3rd, so a couple days ago. So a lot of people not even realizing that the day this happened, the Chinese delegation was there. And I got a clip I'll play for you in a second once I find it. It's crazy. And I think he did it on purpose because the Chinese delegation was there. And it's crazy. Where is it? Anyway, let me look it up. Here we go. So, and this is why I say that this was a very large message that was sent, because it was done while the Chinese delegation was in Venezuela.
Bueno verte. Me trae muy buenos recuerdos. Feliz año. Feliz año todo. Este es el año del caballo, ¿verdad? Usted es caballo. Yo soy tigre. Tú. Tanto tiempo. Yo lo conocí a él muy joven. Muy joven. Hace 20 años. Hace 20 años. Sí. como traductor cuando estaba el presidente Gustavo.
Exactamente, sí, sí.
Ahora es director.
Es director.
Qué increíble, ¿verdad? Como pasa el tiempo. Estás igual. Qué bueno verte.
You see, Trump had his own message to send, and that message was heard. Same day, same country, but a very strong message. And I think it ties into something much larger. Maduro was saying he was ready to make a deal, and then we had Venezuela, you know, getting what they got. So, Trump, how does the audio sound again, y'all? How is it sounding? Can somebody let a comment in there and let me know? If I could share my screen, I would show you that the messages that I keep getting sent. You see, Pam Bondi, I went over what she said, but I'll read it here. Nicolas Maduro and his wife have been indicted in the Southern District of New York, charged with narco-terrorism conspiracy. But that's just the tip of the iceberg, because this is much larger than any of the narco-terrorism. It's way bigger than that. And it goes back into Trump's national defense strategy. Now, of course, Trump is having fun with this, with, you know, the memes and all the, you know, the memes he's been sharing. They're having fun with it, like they always do. Now, the Democrats won't remember everything Maduro and Hugo Chavez and all them did to Venezuela. In fact, a lot of Democrats, for example, these ones here, I don't even know how to pronounce her name, but you know who she is. She was one of the squad members. So now Trump is going to decide who's the next leader of Venezuela should be, and not the people of Venezuela. Reminder, Machado was the unity opposition candidate chosen by the Venezuelan people in the last election and won the Nobel Peace Prize, which Trump will never do. So see, these people are talking all this smack about everything, and then it's this one here. It's not about drugs. If Trump wouldn't have pardoned one of the largest narco traffickers in the world last month, it's about oil and regime change. No, this is much larger than oil. Like, as I'll go on, I have, you know, yeah, the oil is a plus, the resources are a plus, but it's not just about oil. It's about hemispherical control and controlling the Western Hemisphere. That's what it's about. That's what it's about. It has nothing to do with anything. Like, all that stuff is benefits. And then you got Zorhan Mondani condemns U.S. capture of, like, of course he's going to condemn it because he's a socialist communist too. Mondani strongly condemns Trump's capture of Venezuelan leader Maduro as act of war. And it looks like he says something here. Got an ad. I'm going to mute it real quick. And then once it plays, I'll turn it back up. But it's just crazy that all these people are coming out in defense of Maduro. And I think that's very, very telling of who's on the payroll, and like these little, blue-haired liberals that are out here. They don't know a damn thing about the history of Venezuela and what the people went through with Maduro.
My first deputy mayor, my chief of staff, my chief counsel, the police commissioner, as well as other members of my team, I called the president and spoke with him directly to register my opposition to this act and to make clear that it was an opposition based on being opposed to a pursuit of regime change, to the violation of federal and international law, and a desire to see that be consistent each and every day.
And you see the majority of that crowd, old white boomer liberals. As you see, all these other all the Venezuelans are happy about it. But let's look at what the international community is saying, because it ties into the Monroe Doctrine and the national defense strategy, and then we can kind of understand what possibly is going to come next. And that's the critical part of this. One man who fucked around and found out, but it's bigger than that, because this is, like I just stated, it's about the control of the Western Hemisphere. And I think it started with taking back the Panama Canal, like that, taking back the Panama Canal from the Chinese. I think that's when it started. And then to do what happened in Venezuela was the next stage of it. And then I think either Cuba or Colombia, one of those are next. I think without Venezuela, I think Mexico is going to crumble, but I think Cuba will collapse. Or, I think Cuba is going to collapse because, I mean, they were peddling a lot of money through Venezuela. But the U.S., this person here from Russia, the U.S. committed an act of armed aggression against Venezuela, which gives rise to deep concern and warrants condemnation. The pretext used to justify these actions are untenable. Russia affirms its solidarity with the Venezuelan people. Well, my thing is if they're affirming a solidarity with the Venezuelan people, then you wouldn't want Maduro in power, because he's starving the people, he's robbing everybody blind, and he's the leader of a cartel group. So if you stand with the Venezuelan people, you would want what's best for them, and what's best for them is to have the socialist dictator out and let them hold a new election, which that's coming. That's been stated by the Trump administration that once the dust settles, they're going to hold a new election. Personally, I think they should just give it back to the person that actually won it to begin with, the woman that won that Nobel Peace Prize, and the guy that she was running with. That's who it should go to. But just make it, take out any type of fuss or anything and just hold a new election and let them people vote, so that way their voices can be heard, and then honor the results of that. But make sure that because this Venezuela is where all the election fraud and the Smartmatic machines, that's where a lot of it came out of Venezuela. So you got to make sure that it's paper ballots. You got to make sure it's honest. So they got a lot to do to actually get this ball rolling. So Russia, it's, and it's like I was saying, Russia, they're all connected with Venezuela, China, Iran, all these BRICS nations. They're all connected. Every one of them, they're all connected. Every one of them. So then you got Iran. They made a statement too. And if I can find it, I'll show you. You just type him in. He even made statements too. Those who argued the solutions to the country's problems was negotiating with the U.S. have seen what happened in the midst of Iran negotiating with the U.S. The U.S. government was busy behind the scenes preparing plans for war. But this guy here, it's already been reported that he's making plans of seeking asylum in Moscow. Of course, Iran, they're going to condemn what happened. But like I said, they have their own problems, like people protesting and uprising in the country against the regime. I mean, it's crazy. There's a lot of protests going on in Iran right now. And we know what they said about Trump. Let's see, it says Iran's New Year's resolution threatened U.S. military, hope for the best. There's an old saying about this is what Iran was stating after the Maduro thing. There's an old saying about someone's mouth writing checks his butt can't cash. It's usually taken to mean someone is making threats they can't back up. It's a warning that Iran's current leadership should take to heart. Instead of following Trump's warning, the United States is concerned about cracking down on the ongoing protests, the leaders of Iran armed forces. And I have a thing here of what Trump stated about the Iran protest. If Iran shoots and violently unalives peaceful protesters, which is their custom, the United States of America will come to their rescue. We are locked and loaded. We're locked and loaded and ready to go. Thank you for your attention to this matter. So, yeah. But again, the bigger picture here, he said they're locked and loaded and ready to go. But let's move forward to the EU and what the EU stated. Well, one of the people from the EU here. I have spoken with Secretary of State Marco Rubio and our ambassador in Caracas. The EU is closely monitoring the situation in Venezuela. The EU repeatedly stated that Mr. Maduro lacks legitimacy and has defended a peaceful transition. The European Union calls for a calm and restraint by all actors to avoid escalation and to ensure a peaceful solution to the crisis. We are in close contact with the United States as well as regional and international partners to support and facilitate dialogue with all parties involved, leading to a negotiated, democratic, inclusive, and peaceful solution to the crisis. They're acting like this is such a crisis. It's just Trump enacting his national security policy and the Monroe Doctrine, because enough is enough. I don't know about you guys, but I don't want China and Russia and Iran having a strategic point between the United States and South America. I mean, could you imagine if they hit if they armed Venezuela, if they brought nukes into Venezuela, dude, it'd be over with. It'd be over with. It would be like Cuban Missile Crisis all over again. So then you got condemnation. World leaders react to U.S. action in Venezuela. But there was something else I wanted to look at. It was Mexico's reaction and the Brazilian president. I thought I had it bookmarked. Let's see. That Ursula, whatever her, or I'm Schleinbaum or whatever her name is. Of course, she said something. Let's see. And this guy, unreal that the EU can't even as much as condemn such a textbook act of aggression after spending the last 3 years lecturing the world on the need to defend the inviolability of these principles. Ukraine set aside. Think about the precedent this sets for Greenland. And see, and that's what a lot of people are bringing up now. They're saying, oh, Greenland. I mean, I don't really think Greenland would be... I think Trump's more worried about... Because Greenland's not housing Russians and Chinese, and it's not, you know, funneling drugs and rigging our elections. I think Trump's more worried about places like Venezuela, Cuba, Colombia, all these corrupt Latin American countries. That's the more important thing right now. And see, and that's what a lot of people are missing. Everybody's going, oh, Greenland, but it's, you know, people just don't get it. The government of Mexico. So here's Mexico. The government of Mexico condemns and strongly rejects the military actions carried out in the recent hours. Now, this report was the day it happened. So the recent hours by the armed forces of the United States of America against targets in the territory of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. A statement posed by Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum. The statement called for an end to any act of aggression against the Venezuelan government and people, and said the actions were in clear violation of Article 2 of the United Nations Charter. The charter, among other things, calls for disputes among nations to be settled peacefully. See, and that's another thing. We need to pull out, like, the UN. See, these globalists, the EU, the UN, these globalists, see, they think they're going to run everything. Latin America and the Caribbean is a zone of peace. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Condemnation and applause in Latin America over U.S. after U.S. seizes Venezuela's Maduro. See, the people are happy, but these corrupt leaders, they're not happy at all. Because they know Venezuela was their piggy bank. And now Trump pretty much cut the head right off of the deep state snake. He cut the head right off the snake. Latin American leaders were divided between condemnation and jubilation in the wake of a surprise attack on Venezuela early Saturday. the U.S. President Donald Trump said resulted in the capture of Nicolas Maduro. And, you know, of course, Cuba's not going to want, you know, they're of course, Cuba, they're going to have a negative response because they invaded like I said earlier, they invaded Venezuela like almost 30 years ago. They're the ones who put in Chavez and all of them. Like, that's how this all started, was through Cuba. Cuba prepares for possible American aggression in wake of Maduro's capture. During a press conference after the dramatic capture of Maduro and his wife, Trump suggested that Cuba may be next, the nation to bear the brunt of American diplomatic and potentially military pressure. Cuba is a failed state whose people have suffered for many years. Cuba is going to be something. We'll end up talking about it. So, like I said, of course, all them countries, they're going to come out against it because they're on the cartel and the deep state's payroll. I'm going to start closing some of these out. You know, and what's crazy is the UN Security Council even held an emergency meeting today with the agenda being threats to international peace and security. But Mike Waltz absolutely destroyed them to their faces. Let's take a listen. Here we go. Hold on one second.
Credible election. Integrity measures essential to upholding credible elections. If the UN and the United Nations in this body confers legitimacy on an illegitimate narco-terrorist and the same treatment in this charter of a democratically elected president or head of state, what kind of organization is this? We should note that over 50 countries, many nations, including the European Union, including a number of Latin American countries in the region, and of course the United States, again, over 50 countries rejected the legitimacy of Maduro's re-election following the disputed 2024 elections and do not recognize him as Venezuela's legitimately elected president. Transparency and integrity measures.
You know, of course, the UN is going to act like this because they're all globalist hacks. And they don't want what Trump's doing, which is bringing the Monroe Doctrine back. But are any of you really surprised or shocked about all their reactions? Do you not understand what President Trump stated? He made it really clear. But the left is all crying. You know, Maduro said he was ready to make a deal. Yeah. Okay, sure he was. Like I said, he was just running out the clock. He had more than enough time. J.D. Vance, Rubio, Hegseth, and others said Trump gave him ample opportunity. But see, like I said, something larger was brewing. See, I don't have all my stuff pulled up. Like I said, Trump made it very, very clear. I had something about the Chinese. Here we go. Let me go back here. Just hang with me for a second. So it's Venezuela. Chinese joint oil venture partner installs drill rig in Lake Maracaibo. China Concord Resources Corporation installed a self-elevating offshore oil platform. See, China was setting up shop, Russia was setting up shop, and remember, Venezuela has around 600,000 Chinese citizens. Don't forget that. But they were literally setting up shop in our literally in our backyard, right? In the Western Hemisphere. They were trying to not only control the Eastern Hemisphere where they are, but they were trying to establish dominance here in the Western Hemisphere as well. Putin tells the U.S. to stop Coast Guard pursuit of rogue tanker. After a 10-day slow-motion chase, Putin has thrown the rogue Bella a lifeline on New Year's Eve. Formerly stateless ship suddenly appeared on Russia's maritime registry, and Moscow asked Washington to cease efforts to board the ship. So, like I was saying, they're trying to establish dominance in our hemisphere. And Trump's not having it, and I don't blame him. You see, there's a lot of interest in Venezuela because it's rich in natural resources, and Venezuela serves as a strategic point in securing the Western Hemisphere, like I was just stating. It's the perfect location between North America and South America. It's like it's right there. And when Russia and China start showing support for Venezuela, well, like I was telling you, Trump didn't really have a choice but to react, because a Russia-China controlled Venezuela would be catastrophic for America and our national security, and he made this position clear with the blockade. He made it very clear with the blockade.
All right, well, that was a beautiful event for three great people. And they're now looking down, and their parents and wives and all of the people that were there were, devastated, but great people, great people. So thank you very much for being there. Yeah, she's doing a great job. Just a blockade. Not going to let anybody going through that shouldn't be going through. You remember they took all of our energy rights. They took all of our oil from not that long ago, and we want it back. But they took it. They illegally took it. Oh, Dan did a great job. I think he wants to go back to his show.
So see, Trump, we want it back. Trump demands Venezuela return land, oil rights back to the United States. This was back in December. All right. Now, I mean, and people were all talking, it's a blockade. What do you expect? You see, now with Trump's national security strategy, it revives the Monroe Doctrine. And like I said earlier, I think Venezuela was the testing ground for it. For around 200 years, the doctrine was one of the most misunderstood and most powerful ideas in American foreign policy, period. It wasn't about power or empires. It was about boundaries, which obviously the Biden administration and other administrations didn't know the definition of. I want to pull up that doctrine real quick, so that way people can get an idea of what I'm talking about. So let's take a look at it here. So, in 1823, the U.S. declared the Western Hemisphere closed to future European colonization and interference through the Monroe Doctrine, stating that the Americas, which is South America, Central America, North America, the Americas, and Europe were separate spheres, and any European meddling in the Americas would be seen as a hostile act against the U.S. This landmark policy warned European powers against establishing new colonies or controlling independent nations in the Americas. Okay? Now, what did we see happening in Venezuela? What have we seen happening in places like Cuba, in places like Colombia and Mexico? Russia, China, and Iran, America's adversaries, were setting up shop. And this completely violates the Monroe Doctrine. Key points of the Monroe Doctrine. No future colonization. The American continents are not open for further colonization by European powers. Separate spheres. The political systems of the old world, Europe, and the new world, Americas, are fundamentally different and must remain separate. Non-interference. The U.S. would not interfere in European, now this is key, would not interfere in European wars. Now, what would this take away? NATO and all of our money going in to Ukraine and Israel and all, funding these foreign wars. If Trump brings back the Monroe Doctrine as it's written, it would eliminate all of that. We would be here and they would be there. If they want to fight a war, that's on them. And that's how it should be. Would not interfere in European wars or existing colonies, but would view any attempts to extend European influence in the Americas as a threat. Now that is very, very symbolic. And when he brought up the Monroe Doctrine in his press conference, and then when Alex pointed it out, that's when I started doing a little bit of research on it. And I'm telling you, this makes all the sense in the world of why we've seen what happened in Venezuela, the Panama Canal even. I mean, you can even date it back to there. I think that's when it started. It's just nobody's seen it. It's just once Venezuela happened, that's when the pieces started fitting together. Significance. It established the U.S. as a protector of the hemisphere. So that means all like Mexico and Scheinbaum and all these people talking smack about what Trump did. I think you would want to have a good relationship with your neighbors. Am I right? Although at the time it was more of a symbolic statement than a show of military force. It became a cornerstone, like I just stated. It was the most misunderstood and brilliant piece of national security strategy ever. Cornerstone of U.S. foreign policy by shaping its relationship with Latin America for centuries. And what has Trump done? He's really focused on borders and boundaries. In 1823, the United States, they declared that the Western Hemisphere would not be open to foreign empires. I mean, it's pretty clear. That doctrine, that doctrine literally shaped American strategy for generations. Then, in the late 20th century, it quietly faded and was replaced by what? Globalism. And the idea borders mattered less than systems. Trump's national security strategy reverses that assumption. It turned it upside down, operationally reviving the logic of the Monroe Doctrine. And the lamestream media didn't report it this way because they didn't want you to know it was this simple. That the Western Hemisphere is a vital U.S. security zone. And hostile regional powers will not be allowed to establish strategic positions here, ever. And that's what they were doing. They were establishing strategic positions so that way they had, what's the word I'm looking for? They had like a bargaining chip. Venezuela is now where that enforcement became visible. And under Maduro, Venezuela was no longer treated as this frail, dysfunctional state. It was framed as a platform for Russian security cooperation, Iranian financial and intelligence networks, and Chinese economic leverage infrastructure, control, and transnational criminal organizations operating with state protection. As we've seen. We've seen all of this. It's all out there. If you look into it, you'll see it. And under the Monroe Doctrine, that all crosses a red line. It doesn't require logical alignment. It requires strategic denial. No hostile power centered near U.S. borders. So, Monroe being captured is hemispherical enforcement. And once that happened, as you've seen, every major power reacted not emotionally, but strategically. And I'll get into that further when I come back. So, like I stated, these countries and these powers, they didn't react emotionally, they reacted strategically. With China, Beijing saw Venezuela as precedent and looks at one question: what behavior is now acceptable? It saw the U.S. acting decisively where it geographically mattered the most. Now, let's hope that this doesn't give China the bright idea to go after Taiwan. A lot of people are saying that it can. It can happen. But this shows that with Monroe, if the U.S. draws a boundary, they will enforce it, and raises the cost of miscalculation, making that move very difficult. With Russia, Moscow's concern wasn't at the initial outrage, but the loss of leverage, because Venezuela has been a part of Russia's asymmetric pressure. By removing that foothold, the Kremlin is forced to reassess if the world is returning to spheres of influence. Now, here's the question. If the U.S. enforces the Monroe Doctrine, does that legitimize Russia using its own regional doctrine, meaning Ukraine, or going back to the way the Soviet Union operated, things like that? Who knows? But it does mean deterrence hinges on clarity. If red lines are defined and enforced, escalation becomes much more risky. And if it vague, it's more tempting. That's the gamble Trump took. And it was a huge gamble that he took. With Iran, Tehran's power depends on distance, proxy networks, and plausible deniability. A Monroe-style America dismantling these foreign platforms is uncomfortable for Iran, and that's why we've been seeing them saber-rattling so much lately, because their influence only works if the host that they're trying to sway this influence on, if they accept it. And I think that acceptance just blew up in Venezuela when Maduro was captured. So the question is, did Trump just open Pandora's box? No. The box was already opened when the globalists decided geography and boundaries no longer mattered. Trump didn't open it, he acknowledged it existed by enforcing hemispherical boundaries. And he signaled that power is regional and enforcement matters. But this is a double-edged sword. On one end, it's a more honest way, and it keeps things in line, but the other, it's dangerous, because once the Monroe Doctrine is fully out again, everyone else starts dusting off their own versions that have been, all their own versions that have been tucked away. And that's the trade-off that could shape the future of global politics. That's what happened in Venezuela. It wasn't about Maduro. Now, Maduro did commit crimes. And I think with them capturing Maduro and with the, him facing trial, I think they're going to offer him a plea agreement. And I think the plea is going to be him telling the Trump administration who all was involved, what happened with the election systems, where all the bodies are buried. And that's important to remember. The question everyone should ask, do you want America dominating in this hemisphere? Or do you want the Chi-Coms, China, Russia, and Iran? This action and the 18 plus trillion on the table just put the U.S. at an even more powerful position to have everyone pull out of China, and move their money here, which we've already started seeing happen since Trump took office. But now with this, it'll flood back because everyone will see the U.S. as a dominant power again, and that's how we win. That's how we get out of the debt the globalists put us in, so we collapse. And that was their plan. If Kamala would have gotten in, the country would have been in a third world state. It would have been a hellhole. And that was their plan, to completely collapse the current system and do their whole Build Back Better. That was what it was all about. So this isn't about, this isn't just about the resources. Yeah, sure, the resources are a plus, and the 18 trillion secure, it's 18, think about that, folks. $18 trillion with Venezuela. This will secure the dollar in the future, because if the dollar crashes, we will see a Great Depression style event on steroids. But this is also about enforcing the Monroe Doctrine and establishing hemispherical dominance, exposing the election fraud being run out of Venezuela, shutting off the money laundering and the drug and human trafficking, exposing all the politicians on the payroll. And that's what I was telling you about the plea deal. If he takes a plea deal and starts singing, it's going to expose what happened with all the elections, who's all on the payroll, and it cuts off this mothership command. Like Venezuela was like the mothership, and it exercises American will and America making the decisions, not the globalists, not the UN, not BlackRock. And I think that's where Trump, he needs to be very, very careful, because they have spent decades building this globalist system and going away from this Monroe Doctrine, this style Monroe Doctrine. Trump needs to be very, very careful, because these people are backed into a corner, and once he starts going after stuff like this, that's when you better start worrying if he's going to be JFK'd. Because they will stop at nothing to keep power, keep control, and keep us under their thumb. That's their goal. And today was the thing with Maduro, where he was in court, and I'm pretty sure he said he pleaded not guilty. It looks like he had a lot of pressure from China, Russia, Cuba, and Iran. It's like I was just stating to you. He's walking around with a smile, like a weight is lifted off his shoulders. I don't know. I think there's a lot more. Like I was saying, this wasn't just about Maduro. This was about reestablishing the Monroe Doctrine. Maduro declared himself innocent before the New York judge and says he is a decent man. The accusations against him are a scandal on top of all the evidence against him, and yet he still believes he's innocent. What do you all think? Do you think that with what we've seen with the Panama Canal and what we just seen with Venezuela, do you think that this is Trump reestablishing the Monroe Doctrine? Because that's what I think. And a lot of people are missing it. Nobody's really seeing that angle of it. You got all these people, they're all, you know, everybody's all hating about it, but I mean, I think that is telling to the fact that who's on the payroll. And if the Monroe Doctrine becomes, you know, the law, you know, pretty much is reestablished, what do you think that means? Do you think that Russia could dust off their own version? You know, all these other countries, what do you think happens? I want to hear from you. But anything to get us out of the globalist control and globalist empire, I'm down for it. That's what I think. And that was the report that I had for you today. So now we can just sit here and check out some stuff. Oh, wow. So check this out. After Nick Shirley exposed the Somali fraud in Minnesota, Tim Walz has dropped out of the 2026 Minnesota governor's race amid a multi-billion-dollar fraud scandal in his state. Wow, let's take a look at this.
Who went to major breaking political news out of St. Paul, Minneapolis, Minnesota. Tim Walz will not seek re-election as governor, and what a fall from grace this has been for him. You might recall in the spring of 2023, he pushed through several progressive ideas to the state legislature that caught the attention of Barack Obama, who went to Twitter to give his endorsement for the programs, which eventually caught the attention of people like Kamala Harris, who chose him to be her running mate as the vice president. Introduced in Chicago at the convention in August of last year, a debate that was an absolute disaster with J.D. Vance at one point called himself a knucklehead.
Hey, Bushcraft. How you doing, man? Yeah, it's all right. I get it.
But after reportedly billions of dollars have been stolen from taxpayers by way of the state of Minnesota, Tim Walz says he will not seek a third term. What a remarkable 2 years in the national spotlight has been for him, Dana.
And
this is pretty telling. It shows that he's guilty. He knows he's guilty. And he's making a run. I think he's getting out while he can. Nicolas Maduro just pleaded not guilty to drug and weapons charges that would carry up to life in prison. Maduro is cooked. See, I think, like I was stating earlier, I think he's going to do the plea deal. And with that plea deal, I think it's going to take the whole system down. But once you start getting word of that, that's when people need to start watching, because the deep state and the globalists, they could Epstein him to keep anything from getting out. That dude knows a lot. He knows, he was running it. He was the bag man. He literally knows where all the bodies are buried for the deep state. He knows where everything is. So, yeah. I don't think Trump opened Pandora's box, like I said. The box was already open when the globalists decided that the boundaries and geography didn't matter. And then Nick Shirley, I ended Tim Waltz. Come get me, I'm waiting. Colombian president taunts U.S. after Trump puts Latin American countries on notice for pushing drugs. I'm covering. So now the Colombian president is talking smack, just like Maduro did. And what happened to Maduro? Everybody's seen what happened to Maduro. Oh, this guy here is a rhino, man. Cuba, like I was telling you, Cuba is already preparing and all this. Cuba prepared their 2K-12 Soviet air defense systems after Trump threatened the island nation. You know, to be honest, it wouldn't take shit for the U.S. to go right into Cuba. It wouldn't take nothing for the U.S. to launch some Tomahawks, hit those damn battery systems there, and end it. See, they don't got money to feed their people, but they got money to practice launching these missiles out. Yeah. This is just crazy. And then you know what's even more crazy is you got all these liberals in the streets protesting, saying release Maduro and Trump's a war criminal and war crimes and all this, but yet the Venezuelans and people that used to live in Venezuela are happy about it. They're cheering. Like, look at this. This is what happened to the day of Maduro getting captured. This was some of the scenes coming out of Venezuela. But yet you got liberals in the streets of America that don't know nothing. They know nothing about the history of Venezuela and what those people went through for almost 30 years. Liberty at last. Exiles across the globe celebrate Maduro's capture following a U.S. military operation with Venezuelans in Miami, Santiago, and Madrid chanting freedom after decades under authoritarian rule. So, yeah. All these people. Look at all these people. Look at this. But yet, you got liberals are all against it. Everybody's against it. All these Democrat politicians, they're all against it. And then you got people talking, saying, well, why didn't he have congressional approval? This was illegal. Trump didn't need a congressional approval. As I stated in my other live stream with the 1973 War Powers Resolution, he didn't need congressional approval. And with him doing it the way he did it, there were no leaks. And that's why the operation went off with such success, and no U.S. military were killed. None. I think there was one injury. I think that was it. But it wasn't leaked out. And Congress, as you know, is full of leaks. Like, it's a leaking sieve. It's a swamp. But that's what I have for you today. If you can, share everything out. I'm going to take some clips off of this live feed and create it into some videos. with some key points from today's live stream. So if you don't mind, if you're watching and you're not already subscribed, please subscribe, like the video, share it all out. And until next time, keep on prepping, stay safe, God bless, Patriot Independence out.